we might be delayed a few minutes. Thank you. a quorum. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Fong,
Here.
Logue, Bonilla, Hall, Mendoza, Swanson,
Present.
Valadeo.
Here.
Four.
Okay.
Move the consent.
Okay. The consent calendar has been moved and seconded. 3 bills are on consent: SB 327, Elections and Constitutional Amendments Committee; SB 593 by Gaines; and SB 801 by Kehoe. It's been moved and seconded. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Fong,
Aye.
Fong, aye. Logue, Bonilla, Hall, Mendoza, Mendoza, aye. Swanson,
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Valadeo,
Aye.
Valadeo, aye.
Okay. 4-0. See, Mr. Logue would like to vote.
Mr. Logue, on the consent, Logue, aye.
5-0. It's out. Consent. We're waiting for our 3 bills. They're still in caucus right now, Senate caucus. So. Okay, we'll have a recess till 2 p.m. because the Senate members are still in committee, in caucus. Okay. We have an author ready to present. Can you call the committee members to return to the committee room? Senator Yee, SB 88.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and my apologies for being late. We've got caught up in our caucus. But let me just indicate that as author amendments to remove the local appeal process to challenge translation, the California Association of Clerks and Election officials expressed that the above section is an additional step, and since the judicial branch has a process under the existing code, and with that, my understanding is that that association will now be removing its opposition. With that, we're also making clarified amendments that if a candidate's name is to appear on the ballot in more than one jurisdiction in an election, then all those jurisdictions must use the same phonetic transliteration or character-based translation of the name. So with that, the bill basically tries to correct a situation that we find in a number of elections now where individuals are using translations of names to try or to attain a particular character name so that they advantage their election, and this is clearly rather unfair and trying to sway voters in one direction or another, and this bill attempts to correct that particular problem. And with that, urge an aye vote.
Okay. Any witnesses in support?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Deborah Seiler. I'm representing the CACEO, the California Association of Clerks and Election Officials, and we appreciate the author removing that particular provision of the law. And that does remove our opposition. We will be considering a support position when we next meet. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? None? Okay. Any questions from members? Well, it's great. It's a great bill, Leland. I appreciate it because, you know, I am Feng Manzhong, and I do go by my Chinese characters in the ballot, and I like the other people to go by their given name too, and so I really appreciate you presenting this bill.
Well, I think as you suggested, that this is really trying to protect the integrity of our election, and that's what this bill tries to do.
Great. Thank you. All right. We need a motion in a second.
I think.
I apologize, I'm late. Nicole Wertelman on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco, and we're in very strong support of the bill.
Great, thank you. Bill's been moved and seconded? Okay. As amended?
That's correct.
Okay. Can we call roll? Yeah. Do you want to close?
Just urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Fong,
Aye.
Fong, aye. Logue, Bonilla, Hall, aye. Mendoza, Swanson, Valadeo, Valadeo, aye.
We're waiting for other members to come.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Chair,
you.
members.
3. All right. Vote on the consent? Assembly Member Hall, would you like to vote on the consent calendar?
Yes. Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Just Corbett and Desaulnier, that's it. We're going to lift the call on item number 1, SB 88 by Senator Yee. The current vote is 3-0, with the chair voting aye. Madam Secretary, please call the absent members.
Logue, Bonilla. Bonilla, aye. Mendoza, Swanson.
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. We have 5.
Okay. And also, okay, that measure is out. Consent calendar.
I did consent.
Bonilla.
Ms. Bonilla? Aye. Aye, Bonilla.
Great. Caught up. We have 2 more. Corbett and DeSaulnier. Senator Corbett, welcome. SB 168.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And please excuse us, senators. We were in a caucus meeting, so our apologies. I apologize for my colleagues, too.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. It's
Thank you
important
for your
business.
patience.
It's important business that you have to take care of.
Thank you. Yes, we were talking about some important things in caucus, yes. Senate Bill 168 deals with the issue of signature gathering for initiatives. Senate Bill 168 would prohibit payment to signature gatherers of petitions on a per-signature basis in order to reduce the incentive to mislead the voting public to collect fraudulent signatures. It does not prohibit payment by salary or hourly wage, only per signature. California's initiative process has been in place since 1911. And the goal, of course, was to put legislative power directly in the hands of the voters. It was a major reform of the day. Since the 1990s, Californians have witnessed a considerable increase in the number and complexity of initiatives introduced by this process, and along with that, unfortunately, an increase in election fraud. The initiative process is a very important tool for California voters and for activists who want to have their voices heard. Through grassroots efforts, individuals and local groups have the opportunity to participate in direct democracy, and I very much respect that and want to make sure we do everything we can to continue to protect that. Senate Bill 168 simply ensures the initiative process remains a valuable tool for California voters. That is why the bill is supported by the Secretary of State and the California Labor Federation, California Professional Firefighters, and others who are here to speak in support. Several people are here to speak in support, including Nicole Baker with the Secretary of State's office.
Witnesses in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Nicole Becker on behalf of Secretary of State Deborah Bowen in support of this measure. I believe paying signature gatherers by signature may create an incentive to lie or mislead voters as to what they are really signing. And this measure has the potential to decrease fraudulent signature gathering practices, and respectfully ask your aye vote.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Christy Baumer representing the California Professional Firefighters. Pleased to be in support of this measure, and also with the Ballot Initiative Strategy Center, who is a Washington, D.C. based organization that seeks to pass initiative reform in the 26 states that have a citizens initiative process. And I believe this is a way to help the citizens regain control of the process and not very wealthy interests that rewrite our Constitution every election cycle. Support.
Mr. Chairman, members, David Jones on behalf of the City of Murrieta. We think that the unintended consequences of the initiative process didn't contemplate this mercenary element of signature gatherers, and I think it distorts the process. Murrieta had a very wealthy, well-heeled people come in and take over the local process, and we think that this bill would be something would be positive to the system. Would ask for an aye vote.
Okay, witnesses in opposition.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, members. Jennifer Barrera on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce, and we are opposed to this measure as we are concerned that it could have the impact of limiting the voters who can engage in the initiative, referendum, and recall process by eliminating the option to gather signatures by payment for signature. You will be left with paying them on an hourly basis, which is more expensive than paying by the signature, and that would limit it to only the wealthy organizations or coalition groups who can afford to pay by the hour instead of by the signature, and so we're concerned with the limitation on that basis. We're also concerned in the fact that there is no evidence necessarily to suggest that eliminating the payment by signature will eliminate the fraud and misinformation or misleading that the author stated their concern with, as there's still the option for fraud, there's still option for misleading voters or people who are signing the petitions when you're paying by hour as well. So we're concerned with the limitation that this will have on the ability for people to participate in the referendum initiative and recall process, and for those reasons we oppose.
Hello, my name is Dale Parks. I just want to say I've been gathering signatures for about 10 years on my own, so I represent just myself. And I want to make it clear as possible that I think this is really a bad idea, because when you gather signatures, you really care about the signatures in the current process. Suppose you get 100 signatures and 75 are valid, you paid for the 100 signatures, so you care about the percentage that's valid. Whereas if you get, say, 100 signatures and 50 are valid and you don't care, then you only pay for the 50 signatures. So there's an incentive to make sure what you're doing is accurate. If you remember the Acorn scandal that happened, it was really horrible. They were paid on per hourly basis. That's why the Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and the other signatures like that, the LA Lakers, they were being paid per hour, so they didn't care what was on the petition. So that was, and the other thing they have here about the forged signatures and the phone book, Acorn, that actually happened because they're paid by the hour and they didn't care. So you get people, and the other thing here lately about the carbon copy, that's very rare. I've never seen carbon copy. It might happen occasionally, but you can clearly tell in the petition it's carbon copy. But if you get people per hour, they are not going to care about the data that's on the petition, and they're just going to care about their quota, fill it out all junky, and turn it in, and don't care because they get paid per hour. Where if you get paid, if you're people like me who actually care and get paid per signature, you'll take pride in your work. And people like me, I'm afraid, might go by the wayside if this were to pass. One more thing I want to add is the biggest question I'm asked in 10 years of doing this is who is paying for this petition. I call up and I get a lawyer, ask me, who are you, why do you want to know? And it's really frustrating to tell the public, I have no idea who's paying for this. If you could, that's, I think, should be the main focus of the committee, because I've been doing this for 10 years and spoke to thousands of people, and that's their number one concern, is not me being paid per signature, but who is sponsoring the petition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and committee members, Mike Velasco, Wine Institute, we also oppose the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members, David Wolf here with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're opposed to the bill.
Mr. Chair and members, Missy Johnson with the California Retailers Association, also in opposition to the measure. Thank you.
Leslie Medina on behalf of Western Growers Association. We too are opposed to the bill.
Silvio Ferrari with the California Building Industry Association, also opposed.
The Secretary is just passing out a piece of paper that I would like to speak about.
Did we get one? Can we have one too?
Oh, I think she has enough. I only have one copy here myself. I'm sure that she has enough. I think I gave her plenty enough. Tim, did you?
Yeah, you can get one.
I think there were 8 copies. I think that's probably.
Can the author get a copy too? I haven't seen this.
Can you give one to the author here? No,
I'd like one.
I gave her all but my one. So I'm sorry. I would have given
You need to keep yours. Thank you. Oh, yes, I've read this.
Yeah. My name is Alvin Romberg. I'm just speaking for myself about this. I just distributed a editorial by Dan Walters, who, as you probably know, is one of the principal political commentators in the state of California, appears in Sacramento Bee. I don't work with the Sacramento Bee, by the way, or for Dan Walters. I think that this the headline pretty much tells it all. It says, ballot bill just a power grab, not reform. And clearly the intention of this is, as it's explained here and can be seen, it's to make the initiative process more difficult for some disfavored interests and easier, therefore relatively easier for the favored groups. Mr. Walters' column concludes by also saying that the sponsors and so on are among the groups that would be favored by this. For example, groups that like unions that can mobilize membership, or very wealthy groups that can employ people to do it. You just heard from a professional signature gatherer giving his personal experience of 10 years, who can do it the way he pointed out is a bad way to do it and has had been used. The effect of this, of course, is then to have the political group that currently has power in the legislative process use that power to reach into the initiative process and hamper or undercut the ability of those who are not in power, you might say, to have countermeasures through the initiative process. And in other words, this bill is just a power grab. And I think it's apparent to anybody that that's what it is. We see what's happening local governments, counties, the states, the nation, even the Western world seems to be gradually descending into some sort of bankruptcy and chaos because of basically what we see, control of special interests of one sort or another, whether it's the right or the left, and that does not produce good government. So this is not a good government bill. This is a bill, frankly, as I think Mr. Walters describes it in 4 words, it's just a power grab. And we could go into more details about it. I would like to add some other aspects about it. For one thing, when would it take effect? Well, the initiative process is a very long process if you're familiar with it. You have to file papers with the Attorney General. You have to get title and summary. There's analysis. You then get 150 days, which frankly is too short. That should be longer like in other states so that there could be more opportunity for true citizen participation. That's one of the reasons that makes it virtually essential to have paid signature gathering in this state. But that being the case, after that, there's a period of time. The signatures, by the way, it's very difficult and it's foolish to try to cheat with the signatures because there is a verification process that goes county by county, either by a random sample, which requires a considerable excess, or by verification of each individual signature by comparison with the affidavits, which is very expensive for the counties. But after that, then you have to be, when it's finally those information is sent to the Secretary of State and the initiative is declared qualified, then it has to be at least 131 days. The point of all this is, if you have this just take effect, sort of, I might say in a certain sense, willy-nilly after it passes and it's signed and so on, that it takes effect, let's say, January 1st, well, there'll be a lot of initiatives where someplace in the process, this process actually lasts from the planning to about 2 years. And people who've made plans and so on and are maybe even in the midst of signature gathering and have a firm employed or are in other words, this could be literally, the result would be to basically terminate their effort arbitrarily at that point. Now, you can be sure that they'll probably, anybody will know that they're going to go to court about this and say that this is sort of like an ex post facto thing that you've put in place and you've sort of a long planned thing that they've carefully planned has been now disrupted. So that's one aspect about it, is the time and method of implementation. So I would just conclude by saying this is just a power grab and it should be voted down. And certainly the initiative process needs to be properly conducted and honest and fair, and it should be open to all sorts of different groups with different motivations, and it should be open especially to citizens. So there does need to be some reform. I would start by saying you need to do, as other states, have a considerably longer period of time to gather signatures so that there wouldn't be such a almost crushing necessity to use paid signature gathering. And there's other reforms that could be done too. But this is not part of those reforms. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions from members? David Valadeo.
Just a quick comment. When I looked this over, the only thing I really saw here that I guess really bothered me the most was a lot of the people that do the signature gathering, they do this for a living, and I feel like we're actually limiting them on their income, and I feel like we're kind of holding them down. And when we give them the opportunity to work hard, pick good locations, do their job, present themselves well, and gain the trust of a person, get more signatures, you open up the opportunity for them to be more successful in what they do, obviously take care of their families and make a better wage. And I really do feel like this is limiting them, and I can't support it for that reason. Obviously what he said I agree with, but on that merit alone, that's the way I saw it, and that's why I'm going to be in opposition to this. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Assembly Member.
Okay. Susan Bonilla.
I did. One of your comments was about somehow this favored special interests, and you mentioned labor and very wealthy people or wealthy business interests. So I'm not quite sure what's the distinction you're trying to make in terms of who's favored and who's not favored. And then secondly, what difference does the mechanism that people are compensated with, why would that in any way impede a group's ability to get their signatures?
Well, maybe I'll answer that. The second one first, which just kind of relates to what Mr. Valadeo said. And some of the objections that have been filed with the committee, you may have read those. If you don't have, human beings usually are motivated by some form of compensation.
Sure.
If you don't have any form of compensation, as the professional signature gatherer spoke here as an example of someone who's worked on it for 10 years, If you try to reward them just by some statement that they're either on salary or they're paid by the hour, and even have a severe penalty for anything less than that. I mean, I could make an anecdotal example. Suppose someone goes out and they're not the most motivated person. Maybe they're not the brightest person. So they go and stand in some place where nobody comes by very much. And the people that come by are people that are not motivated to sign that petition. In fact, maybe they're hostile toward it.
Right.
So they come back then and they say, how many signatures did you get today? Well, I put in 8 hours and they didn't get any signatures. They say, well, we can't pay you.
We need to
They say,
belabor
wait a minute, that's count-based.
Excuse me, we don't
Yeah.
need to belabor all the
Yeah.
options.
Right.
Many people do not work on a per item, per piece basis. They go to work and they do their work. It's up to someone to hire someone responsible.
Sure, I
If they
understand.
hire someone who's going to go stand in an alley and not collect signatures, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. And so if you want to address the other question.
Well, let me finish. That does have something to do because there's ranges from some extreme example to just the question of what Mr. David Valadao said is efficiency and so on. There are some people that are very skilled at this. And is
they
it
could
wrong?
have a higher hourly wage.
Yeah.
That would be based on count then. They could be put in jail for that. That says, right, that's forbidden in here. If they're paid on the basis of count.
Paid higher on experience. I mean, I just don't.
Well, that would be, I would say there would be a jeopardy. If you talk to the signature gathering firms, there would be a serious jeopardy because they could send a ringer in, they could send 2 ringers in, and one did well and the other didn't well, and the other one gets a raise all of a sudden. Well, right away, I mean, that would be a violation.
The point with you, but in terms of what special.
Okay, the other question.
Who is disenfranchised?
Yeah, the other question. The other question is, well, we had the Humane Society just spoke here. The Humane Society is against it. That would be, I presume, I would have to say a special interest, obviously, that's not in favor of this. The Humane Society is a volunteer organization. It has, it's not publicly funded. It depends on volunteer contributions, and it's not an extremely wealthy organization. Now, they did have initiative on the ballot, and as they've stated to the committee in their written statement, that they would probably not have been able to put their initiative on the ballot. They got it on the ballot. The voters approved it. Not everybody maybe approves of their initiative. Well, I don't know how you feel about their initiative, but the fact is the voters approved of it. They got it on the ballot. They say they would not have been able to get it on the ballot as the Humane Society. There's many other groups would not have been able to. Now, what kind of groups?
I just fundamentally disagree with that logic. I don't think that how you pay your employees, whether it's by per signature or by the hour, would in any way determine whether or not you had enough money to fund your campaign, get good workers out there, get what you needed, and get the job done. It doesn't. It's not prejudicial in any way. They would have to. They potentially maybe would be spending more per signature than if they were spending it hourly. So I just disagree. But I'm not going to get into a debate with you. Thank you so much for your comments.
All right, but would you mind if I finished answering your question, though?
No, that was enough.
Apparently, you're not interested in my answer. It was pretty clear.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Assemblymember Logue?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Senator, for testifying today. I cannot support this bill. I'm concerned about the direction the state's going in. It's a combined assault against the grassroots movement, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think that this is really. I'm not sure that this is even legal. No, we're going to. Well, let me finish. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I think that this is something that won't stand up in court. I think that this bill, we're talking about potential for fraud and mismanagement here, and it's interesting to me that we have passed bills out here that would allow for more fraud, but nobody's screaming about it. I really think that the proposition process has to be protected. I think that the grassroots movement has to be protected. And I think when we walk out of here, I agree with Mr. Walters that this is a power grab. And it's going to send the wrong message to the people of California. There's a lot of frustration in the state right now. And I think the people are going to demand that their rights be protected. And I'm concerned about us being able to dictate how they even get paid. I mean, we're being overregulated as it is. So I think the process has worked pretty well. And by the way, if this bill passed, or if it does pass, Prop 98 never would have passed because they had signed signatures. So I respect your right to bring this forward. It's not personal, but I just happen to disagree with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Logue.
Bill's been moved. Is there a second? And seconded by Ms. Bonilla. Any other questions from members?
I'd like to make a few comments on close,
Sure.
if that's possible.
Well, I like this bill. I think you're doing the right thing, and I face a lot of the petition gatherers, and they're hustling, and they make a lot of mistakes, and so by trying to get it per vote, per person, they also have to hustle, and of course, if you just pay them a regular wage, they will not have to hustle to get your signature. They will just have to work and be regular. And so I appreciate that. And so I'm going to support it because of that. You may close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to address a few things on my close. There's been a lot of things said about this. There's been articles in support and articles in opposition. That's nothing new. We all have that with our legislation, and I certainly appreciate the discussion. With regard to, just briefly, on the issue of compensating employees, that's not really the basic issue in this bill. It's more to address fraud. But the fact of the matter is signature gathering companies have the ability to compensate their employees at a level that's appropriate for the work they do, just like any employer, and have the ability to provide insurance that protects them and other benefits, just like we would respect any employee that's doing a good job. So, that might be a concern, but I think that can be addressed by reasonable companies that respect their employees, and I would encourage them to do that and not use this bill as some opportunity for them to escape respecting their employees if they're doing good jobs. With regard to the issue of the bill itself and the facts, I look at the facts. There was a measure passed in Oregon it was Measure 26, a constitutional amendment in 2002, passed by more than 75% of the voters in Oregon. It was a citizens' initiative that banned the payment per signature. The measure was challenged in the courts. A federal judge ruled it constitutional in 2004, and it was upheld by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal and in a decision in 2006. And in addition to that, there has been no proof whatsoever that paying by bounty was a better situation than paying people by hourly rate. There's been no proof in Oregon that this has affected the ability for measures to qualify for the ballot. So there's some real proof in a neighboring state. And Assemblymember Logue, I couldn't agree with you more that we should protect the ability for our, grassroots activists and neighbors and regular people who want to petition and be part of this process. The reason that I decided to carry this bill is because I very much respect, even though it was back in 1910 or 1911, it was a very good reform to allow the initiative process. And we should do everything we can to eliminate the fraud that we see every day so that we can continue to have this sort of process. That's why I very passionately support this. And I understand your thoughts, but I just disagree with you how we get to the protecting the initiative process. The Secretary of State's office wouldn't be here strongly in support of the measure either unless they actually had proof and had significant concern about the fraud that creeps into the process with the bounty signatures. So for all those reasons, I'd appreciate your support on the bill, and thank you for the good debate on this.
Okay, great. Okay, Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Fong?
Aye.
Fong, aye. Logue? No. Logue, no. Bonilla? Aye. Bonilla, aye. Hall?
All aye.
Hall, aye. Mendoza? Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Valadeo?
No.
Valadeo, no. 4-2.
4-2 is out.
Thank you very much, members.
Thank you.
Have a pleasant day.
Okay. Senator DeSaulnier, SB 448.
I heard there was some discussion about being paid, so I came right over here.
The badge bill. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Thank you for letting me present SB 448. I'm sure many of you know that we are on the 100th anniversary of the initiative system in California that Hiram Johnson brought to this state. 24 of 50 states have the initiative system, and you all know we have the most robust of all of them. And in relation to your last discussion, this bill has brought basically simple transparency. It's been since 1982 that a volunteer effort was able to collect signatures to put something on a statewide ballot. So this bill would provides simple transparency and truth in advertising so that people, when they are gathering signatures, will be required to just let the voters know whether they are paid or they volunteer, whether they're a registered voter or not, and where they are registered to vote. We think, and I think very strongly, this is one of those little bills that could make a big difference for all of us who have been approached by signature gatherers. For those of us who understand the system, it's one thing, but for the average citizen who doesn't understand the complexities but enjoys the ability to have the initiative system and direct democracy in California, transparency would be a good thing. So it's a very simple bill that I believe would be, in its own way, transformative and actually help with the initiative system. We know that Californians like the initiative system. We know that, according to the Public Policy Institute's polls the last 4 years, that people also know that there's something amiss, that it's too complicated, and they are unaware of how things get on the ballot. So this would help people understand who they're talking to when they're signing something and how these initiatives get on the ballot, and I would respectfully ask for your aye vote and turn it over to witnesses.
Witnesses in support.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Christy Baumer representing the Ballot Initiative Strategy Center in support of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Nicole Becker on behalf of Secretary of State Deborah Bowen, also in support.
Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members. Good afternoon. David Wolf here again with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're opposed to the bill. As the author mentioned, and I'm thankful for it, people do appreciate and like the initiative process. And according to the PPIC, as the author mentioned, over 60% of voters approve of the initiative process and want to see things on the ballot. I would question, first of all, that they don't know what's on the ballot or how it gets there. Of course they know how it gets there. Every year or every election cycle, we end up qualifying half a dozen or more initiatives. Oftentimes these are constitutional measures that require over 1 million signatures to get on the ballot. So surely individuals know how things qualify for the ballot. Back to the bill in chief, just regarding the badge issue. I'm going to reference an argument I know I've made in this committee before, that of personal responsibility. Every time I go sign an initiative measure in front of a storefront or in other areas, again, I do ask the person gathering the petitions, who put this on the ballot, and I do take time to read the measure that's before me there on the petition. Because again, as I've said before, I do want to make sure I'm not signing to put a tax increase on the ballot. So it's one of my favorite lines. I got to keep on using it. But again, it's that element of personal responsibility that I think is incredibly important, and we don't need a badge to figure that out. So for those reasons, I'd ask for a no vote.
Okay. Any other witnesses in opposition?
Again, my name is Albin Romberg. I just represent myself here. This is a relatively small point, but again, as you can tell from what I said before, I think it's very important that the initiative process be available for volunteers and for grassroots organizations. And I realize it doesn't say specifically, but the implication is that people are going to have pre-printed badges. It says, for example, it has to be at least a 30-point font. Let's suppose a group of friends goes out on a Saturday to some place to help some initiative. Let's suppose they're members of the Humane Society, and they want to gather petitions. Do they have to have pre-printed badges and are they going to have a printing machine or something along? I think it should be made clear that the badge has to be clear. The intention of the badge is the intention, I think, in the law here, but there's some implication that they need to have pre-printed badges, and I don't think that's fair. I think it should be made clear what the intent of the badge is, but it should be made clear that they don't have to be professionally printed badges for every person. This is a big state. There's lots of people gather signatures, and it should be that may seem a trivial point, but I think it's important. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the members?
Yeah. Just one quick question, Senator. If I was a signature gatherer and I asked my wife to sign and I didn't have this badge on me, would I be prosecuted?
No, that's been when we brought the bill last year. Then Senator Denham, who was interested in supporting the idea, didn't in the long run wanted to have some kind of enforcement. We thought it was hard enough to do this first step, so the enforcement issue is admittedly a little bit light, but we thought this was a good first step. And on the other side of that, obviously we don't want people to be prosecuted just because they don't understand it or be in any way diminish people from going out and trying to do as your wife would do. I'm sure she'd be raising signatures to get Mr. Wolf to vote for a tax increase.
You think that could possibly be a bill that would happen next year?
I don't know.
Thank you.
Sandra Swanson. Bill's been moved by Susan Bonilla.
Second.
And seconded by Sandra Swanson. That's it? Okay. Any other questions from members? Well, as I stated several times in this committee, I'm a strong supporter of transparency, and this is a bill that enforces transparency and informs voters when deciding whether to sign a petition or not. But this bill is in conflict with AB 481 Gordon, so I would just like your commitment that you will work with Assembly Gordon to resolve the differences in the bills before you bring it to the governor's desk.
Actually, we've already had discussion. I think it's remedied, so we will continue to work with him until you're comfortable with it.
Okay. With that commitment, I totally support this bill. It's been moved and seconded already. All right. Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Fong.
Aye.
Fong, aye. Logue. Logue, no. Bonilla. Bonilla, aye. Hall. Hall, aye. Mendoza. Mendoza, aye. Swanson. Swanson, aye. Valadeo. Valadeo, no.
5-2, it's out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, colleagues.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you for having my back, Mr. Swanson. Yeah, it's worked out real well.
Okay, we have a few SB 88. Call the absent members.
SB 88, Logue.
Yes.
Logue, aye. Mendoza. Mendoza, aye. Thank you.
You did. SB 168, Corbett.
Mendoza. Mendoza, aye. Thank you.
5-2, that's out. That's it. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.